Let's work. Yo, it's go time, showtime, never backing down time. One shot, yo, make it count, yo. Crunch time, shine time, make this moment my time. Get a grip, yo, ready, set, go. We bring the thunder. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder. Let's go. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Yeah, it's my time, yo time. Step into the spotlight. Get lit, yo. Let yourself go. Our time, high time.
Okay, so I want to talk about the secrets of Spanish tennis from a mindset perspective and from a character and values perspective. A lot of you have read my book. I will plug it now. Who here has read it of my students? Alex, you've been training with me this many years and you haven't read that? It's unbelievable. Anyone else of my students? It's kind of a shame. If you say you read bits and pieces, it's not a long book. It's a very easy to read book. And I wrote it simply. I wrote it not to be complicated. Right, Aubrey?
Yeah.
It's a book that you can easily digest in 1 or 2 nights. And it's a book you can refer back to and use on the court and off the court. But now we're having another meeting tonight and discuss why all my students haven't read this fully. Most of my private students have. This is very easy. You can read it one night easily. But for those of you who have read the book, just as an overview in terms of Spanish tennis, what are some aspects from a psychological point of view, from a mindset point of view, that typifies Spanish players and what they do in Spain? Anyone who's read the book? Yes, Santiago.
Determination and mental.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think anything of any Spanish players who demonstrate that?
Rafa.
Yeah, Rafa's probably the most famous that you all know. Does anyone know any other Spanish players, famous players?
Yeah.
Ferrer. He's a pretty determined guy, right? Anyone else? They're all, who? Muguruza. Sure. There's a lot of them. I think, especially going back in the last 30 years, there are many great Spanish champions. Moya. Juan Carlos Ferrer is another one who made #1. Moya made #1. There's a lot of very successful Spanish players, and they all have some things in their mind. They have a similar mindset in a lot of ways. It comes from the culture in Spain. It comes from the way they're brought up, the way they're taught on the tennis court, and also off the court. But determination is one. What's another one? Like a big picture Spanish player. What do they like? What do they like on the court? We talk about a lot in the academy. What's something we talk about? That Spanish players are willing to do what?
They're patient.
Suffer.
They're patient, and they're willing to suffer. We talk about that a lot. That's a chapter in the book, and that's something that typifies Spanish players from all the whole gamut of Spanish players. I don't know many. I can't think of one Spanish player who when the going gets tough, they say no, it's okay, maybe next time, and they're not like that. So they have this determination, this willingness to fight, this willingness to suffer when the going gets tough. You know, the old cliche, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. They have it sort of wired into them since they're little kids. And it comes not just on the tennis court with the coaches, but also off the court. It's a value that they have in Spain as a people and as a country. So I was really impressed by that. When I first went to Spain and I started talking to different coaches and visiting different academies in Spain, it was a bit of a shock when the coaches said to me directly, they said, we teach the players to suffer. I had never heard anything like that, especially coming from the US. I had never heard coaches talk like that. They just said, we expect that the players will learn to suffer. And if they don't, and some of the coaches told me they expect the players to learn to love the suffering. they actually want to get the players to the point where they actually enjoy it. When it's more and more of a battle, they enjoy it. And that's something that you see with Rafa, and you see with Moya, and Ferrer. The tougher it gets, the dirtier they get with clay all over their body, the more they scrap and fall down and dive, and the longer the match goes, the hotter it is, the more they enjoy it, actually. They actually like it. They like the battle. And that's something that for all of you who are training with us, we try to inculcate that in you guys. We try to get it into your minds that this is something that we like. What's the opposite of that? What do a lot of players do when the going gets tough like that? Anyone know?
They shrink.
They shrink physically? They shrink mentally? What? Like when it's hot, or when it's tough battle, or when players start to get stressed and fatigued, what do a lot of players do in those situations?
Excuses.
Yeah, that's what they do. That's good, Santiago. You know me well. He's trained with me a long time. A lot of players will start to make excuses, right? And they'll start to want to find ways to get out of that situation, to get out of the pressure cooker. And excuse making is something that we try never to do here. I always teach you guys that the champions don't make excuses. That's something that we talk about a lot. And when things get tough and you start to feel the pressure, you embrace that suffering and you don't make excuses and try to find a way out, try to escape by making excuses. That's really common. Anything else you can think of just as an overview with Spanish players? What are they like? Aubrey said patient. That's a really good one. I think that's one of the core values of Toni Nadal. That's what we'll talk about in a minute. I wrote an article. I interviewed Toni Nadal in Mallorca a couple of years ago on one of my last study trips, and we had a really good talk, and it became the substance for an article that I wrote for Tennis Player Magazine, and it's also on my blog now. So that's what we'll review. Some of Toni's ideas about values and character, the Spanish way. But just in a bigger sense, what else do you guys see with Spanish players? Anything in their mindset and their
Humility.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's one of Toni's values. They're humble, they're patient. I was going to talk about patience a little bit. We can talk about it here as well. But what do you see with Spanish players in terms of patience, Aubrey?
Like, they have a mindset where they're not trying to finish the point right away. They try to grind it out, and they're really consistent.
Yeah, they're consistent, and they're willing to do what it takes to get in a high percentage situation. They don't go for broke. They don't take too much risk. It's being somewhat conservative, but knowing the right time to take a risk, and that requires the patience. One of the things that's related to patience is something that no one mentioned, but Spanish players they're dedicated to their physical training. They're dedicated to getting in incredible physical condition, because if you're not fit, it's really hard to be patient. And just as a fundamental rule, if you don't have the fitness, how can you be patient in a match? Because when you're breathing heavy, when your legs are burning, I think it's impossible. It's impossible to say, okay, I'm going to hang here a bit longer in the rally. It's going to force you to go for more than you want. What do you guys think? True? Can you be really patient without fitness? You need to have an endurance. You need to have a well of stamina in order to start to make good decisions and in order to be patient during the points. Really, that's a really important connection. It's hard to have any of these. Well, let's put it this way: it's hard to have any of these mindset or these character traits without the physical part. The physical part will undermine your mentality if you don't have it. You have to have stamina. You have to be strong physically. You have to have endurance to go through the long battle. Otherwise, all of the things that you want with your mind they'll be destroyed in the end. Your mind won't be able to maintain itself, and to be patient, to be calm, to be under control. Control is another one, Aubrey. There's this idea in Spain of control. You want to control your ball. You want to be consistent. You need to control your body. You need to be balanced and move well. And you need to control your mind and emotions. It's a very common theme in Spain. They talk about this a lot. Control, the principle of control. You need to control as much as you can, the situation, the environment, to control your thoughts and emotions, and you need to control, ultimately, you need to control your body well so you can control the ball and be very consistent. So this is also another common sort of big picture macro idea in Spain. All right, let's talk about Uncle Tony. Everyone knows who Toni Nadal is? Yeah? And he's a legend in Spain. I'll go to the other side. Can you see okay? Yeah. Yes?
John said tell you guys if YouTube was ready.
Okay, we're finishing up our lecture and then we'll be out. Okay. So, Toni is a legend in Spain. He was Rafa's young coach, and he raised Rafa throughout the years. He took him from a junior player, a very low-level, beginning tournament player, all the way to 12 Roland Garros and many Grand Slams, an incredible career and still going. And I have a lot of respect for Toni. In my opinion, the genius of Toni Nadal is the way he builds character and his values system. And he's also very good with tactics. For me, I've studied now his system a lot. And for me, he's not really the guy you go to fix your strokes, or the technical guru. But in terms of someone to raise your child the right way and teach your child how to be a good person and a good competitor, he's amazing. And he's one of the, I think, the greatest in the world at that. Has a very good, strong core set of values, and he's also very strict about how he wants the players to behave. Like, for example, in his academy, he's a disciplinarian, and he doesn't accept a lot of deviation from good values, according to him. But I agree with his principles for a living. So let's talk about it a little bit. So first one, I like this quote, guys. Take this first thought from Toni. He says, unequivocally, even if the world is finished tomorrow, I do the right thing. That's values. Values affect everyone and everything in the world. But what does that mean to you guys? Even if the world is finished tomorrow, I do the right thing. Anyone? And no.
You would like to think about what?
Yeah. They have a saying in the military that integrity is what you do. Sean, you'd appreciate this. Integrity is what you do when no one's looking. That's integrity. So, if you're learning something on the tennis court, and coach says, I want you to work on this and this and this, and then after the lesson you go to your group or you go to play and you don't do anything there. You just go, and you forget everything and you do whatever you want. That's an example of not really doing the right thing. If no one's looking, no one knows except you, if you're doing it or not. The coach is not there. I have a saying with all my students that you get better during the week when you don't have a lesson. So maybe a player has 1 or 2 lessons a week with me. And I say the real improvement happens when we're not together, when we're not training together. It's when you are on your own and you are being responsible and doing the right thing, working on the right things that we talk about, we work on in the lesson. You can get better in the lessons, but most of the improvement is happening in between the lessons. When you are working on your own, when you find a way, when you figure it out, and you apply all the principles that we work on in class, in the lesson. A lot of students don't look at it that way. A lot of kids come to a lesson and they say, Coach, make me better. Fix me. Fix it all for me in 1 hour. and they don't take the responsibility to get better on their own. That's an example of doing the right thing. That's an example of values. Okay? Humility is the first one. Who said humility? It's a really important value in Spain. Let's see what Toni says. Humble is the way you have to be, period. Everybody should know their place in the world. The point is that the world is quite big enough already without you imagining that you're big too. What does that mean to you guys? Everybody should know their place in the world. Anyone? The point is that the world is quite big enough already without you imagining that you're big too. Do we all have egos as tennis players or even as people off the court? Harrison? You have that? I think this is one you could work on a lot, actually. But you smile like a little embarrassed, but I'm being quite serious. It's an important quality to have in life. And the way that you're smiling, I'm not sure if you believe it or not. Anyone? Anyone struggle with ego? I do. Work on that a lot. Many people do in life. Most people I meet are not very humble, actually. I think we have a better world if we have more humility in the world. I'll tell you that. But one of the things we see with tennis players, or I see it a lot, is as a player, as you start to win more and your ranking goes up, or your UTR goes up, you start winning big tournaments, you start maybe qualifying for nationals, what happens to your ego? It starts to go up as well. And many times, it's amazing to me how I have a player for a few years and they're not top-ranked player, and I work with them and they get better, they become better, they maybe qualify for bigger tournaments, then they make nationals, then maybe they win a big tournament, and the next thing I know is I'm no longer really coaching them, they're telling me what to do. They know everything now. They're telling me how it is. Chris, I don't need to do that anymore. I just won national tournament. Don't need you anymore. This is an example of ego. And it happens sometimes with the parents too. The parents say, oh, my son, my daughter, doing very well. Don't need advice anymore. We're there. And I would guide you and caution you. Try. I tell this to all my students. I've told this to you too, Harrison, that when you become really great, when you break through, don't forget all the people who helped you. And don't forget your humility. Don't forget that just because you hit a tennis ball well, that doesn't mean very much, actually. That doesn't make you better than everyone else. That's good. It's great that you can play well, but it doesn't make you better than other people. And other aspects of life too. You're successful in school, you're successful with this and that. It doesn't mean you don't treat people with a basic respect. Like if you see Rafa, he's a great example of that. How successful is Rafa? Very successful. Do you know many times he sweeps his own court? Even now. When he plays on the clay, and after practice, he gets the sweeper and he does his own lines. He's number one of the greatest players of all time. Millionaire, yeah. He says thank you to the people who are at the club, at the tournament. Thank you to the tournament director. Really appreciate you doing this. The ball kids, everyone. This is a great example of humility and ultimately respect. Because I think respect for other people a lot of times comes from being humble. You think you're better than everyone else, and you walk around and you expect everyone to do everything for you because you are the center of the world. Maybe you know people like that. I don't like to be around people like that. And I certainly don't want all my players to behave like that. Alright, moving on. This is kind of interesting, guys. You can agree or not, and I know some coaches who might disagree, but Rafa believes that his humility helps him compete better. is an interesting perspective. He believes that because he is grounded and he never thinks too highly of himself, he thinks that he never overestimates his ability. And there's one, I think this is a typo here. Underestimate. Oh, maybe it's correct. Is it correct or wrong?
Yeah,
This is, what?
it's as correct.
Well, I think we had one typo in this article. But, you know, some players, when they think they're so good and they go into the match and they don't take the other player very seriously, it can affect how they play, can affect how they prepare, and ultimately can affect their competitiveness. So maybe you think you're, oh, I'm so much better than this guy. I can't believe he got 3-4 games on me. Now my UTR is going to go down. You know, and then it creates this excuse or this problem where you're not going to compete as well. So what Rafa says is, I always respect my opponent to the point where I never overestimate my own abilities. I never underestimate my opponent. So he can battle. He's always willing to battle, and he never takes anyone for granted. Overcoming obstacles. So at the Nadal Academy, this is a big one. In Mallorca, this is like class third, and they have a lot of signs. And this is one of the sayings that Toni has, like in the locker room, talks about overcoming obstacles. Did you see the first part? Toni believes that life in general has gotten faster and that children and sometimes parents expect instant results and gratification, quick fixes. Do you guys expect a lot of quick fixes? No. Sometimes you do. But what Toni says, life is about overcoming difficult obstacles, challenges. And that many times in life, you're not going to get a quick result. Even though everything's quick nowadays, you can go on the Google machine and search anything. But many times in sport, you have to work really hard over a long period of time to get what you need. And that's what he's talking about here. That relates to perseverance. And overcoming obstacles, having that perseverance to work hard over a long period of time, it helps you build a strong character. If you always expect a quick fix to something, you don't build a strong core in terms of your character. Respect, this is a huge one for me. You guys hear me talk about this a lot. We talk about how respect relates to humility. Here's what Toni says. Respect for other people, for everyone, irrespective of who they might be or what they might do, is the starting point of everything. I wish all of humanity could just work from that basic principle. You know? What do you guys think? Respect for everyone. Another word for that, I might have wrote it here. Maybe it's next. Let's see. It's here. Relating to respect. Tolerance. What does the word tolerance mean? You guys remember?
It's like the ability to ask certain things.
There are people who go through life, they don't tolerate anything. They don't tolerate anyone. And they don't have a lot of respect for people either. So I would encourage you guys, especially you, Harrison, to live your life, and also when you're on the tennis court, try to be tolerant of other people, people who are different than you, people who don't see things the way you see it. Doesn't mean that you're right and they're wrong, or they're right and you're wrong, but just have a basic respect for other people. Now, something really interesting in terms of respect, Toni believes that if you have respect for, for example, your coaches, it's going to help you get better faster. Why do you think? You have respect for not just coaches, but also the players. Like, let's say in an academy. Let's say you're at a club, and you show respect to the coaches there, you show respect to the other players. Why is that going to help you get better faster than someone who is disrespectful? Anyone? This is a good one. Max, do you remember?
Because the coaches are going to want to help you more if you're respectful to them.
That's what he says. On a fundamental level, coaches are human beings. If you are kind and respectful to the coaches, they're going to want to help you. You know, they're going to want to give you more. If you're a jerk, you don't respect anyone. The coach, I mean, ideally, they're going to try. But even the best coach in the world is like, man, if you don't respect them, I mean, they may spend more time with somebody else. You know? So on the fundamental level, I really think that's an important concept, to be respectful, especially of the people who are trying to help you. Harrison, we've talked about how as you start to get better, you remember the people that helped you. That's an important, we talked about that before. As you get better and better, don't forget the people you helped. Unfortunately, I've helped a lot of players get better, and sometimes they forgot, they show no appreciation, and that's just part of the business, part of the coaching business. Sometimes you help a player for many years, and when they get interviewed and they say, who helped you when you were younger, they don't even mention your name, or they say, oh, no. Did anyone see what happened with Osaka and her coach recently? What did Osaka say? She won 2 Grand Slams, and she made #1 in the world, and she fired her coach. Not only did she fire her coach, but she threw him under the bus. In all her interviews, she said that he didn't say anything helpful at all, and he wasn't very helpful. This is a guy, it's Sasha Bayan. His name is Sasha Bayan. And whatever, obviously they had some conflict, but at the end of the day, if you're with a coach and you make you win 2 Grand Slams and you make #1 in the world, probably you should be a little deferential in your interview. I said, yeah, you know, we had some disagreements, but how about respect? I still respect this person, and they helped me. That would be an example of respecting someone after you've made it. Unfortunately, many players don't do that, even at the pro level. Okay, we talked about patience. Is it easy to become a champion in tennis?
No.
It's going to happen like that?
No.
You have to have patience in the long road of development. Some of you may have started tennis late. You may not be the greatest player you can be at 18. It may take you to 25. You have to be patient. You have to see the long arc of your development. I started tennis, I played my first tournament at 14 years old. Is that late? It's very late. Always behind my peers. But I persevered, I kept working hard. When I was 18, all of my friends were getting to college and they started to coast. And I worked my butt off in college and kept working, even through all my 20s, kept working, and I became a really strong player because I always had patience, and I was always willing to keep working beyond the horizon there. I never limited myself by setting arbitrary timelines for myself, saying, oh, if I don't make it by next year, I'm a failure. I never said. In fact, because I had a lot of injuries and I never made it on the ATP tour, I really do feel like I did fail in my own career. But I feel that it's more a failure because time ran out. I got older, I had a family, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like I ran out of time. I actually don't feel like I didn't give up. The way that I'm wired, I would have probably kept training even well into middle age, old age. Right? I don't like to fail at anything. So it's just an example of being patient and trying to always work and persevere and to try to achieve what you want. Don't set arbitrary timelines, and things don't always have to happen fast. There's a famous quote from Jimmy Connors. He said, I never lose, I only run out of time. He said, I never lost a match, just ran out of time. And that's sort of the idea Jimmy didn't train in Spain, but what a fighter. He was an amazing player. He was #1 in the world. He was known for his grit. And that's an example of grit. He said, I never feel like I lost, I just ran out of time. In my career, I feel like I did fail, but at the same time, I feel like I ran out of time. I was willing to keep fighting, but I just ran out of time. All right, we talked about tolerance. How is tolerance important on the tennis court? We talked about it in life, but how is it important on the tennis court? How about this one? Tolerance. Toni says tolerance in this case means how a player handles the stress and mental emotional challenges of the battle. Strong players are able to tolerate more stress and pressure than weaker players. Tolerance is interwoven with the concept of self-control. Remember we talked about the theme of control in Spain? The control. That means also self-control. How many of you struggle with that? Handling stress, mental, emotional challenges in the battle? How many of you? A lot of us. Myself included. Jacob, that's something I saw in the tournament this weekend. You were having a lot of struggles within yourself in terms of the emotions. But that's very common. You're not the only one. And one of the keys is to tolerate, to control your emotions as best you can, so that you can have a clearer mind and you can stay focused in the match. Because if you don't tolerate things well, you can get distracted very easily. Right? We have to have for example, you're playing a match and there's some noise here. You can choose to get upset at that noise and let it distract you from the match. Or you can tolerate that, whatever activity is going on there, you can try to tolerate it better and stay focused on your goal, or your tactic, or whatever the opponent or your game plan. Just an example of tolerance. And the last one is, I think it's the last one. Yeah. We talked about this. And it's funny because everywhere you go in Spain, no matter if you talk to a coach at the local club, you talk to famous coaches like Toni Nadal, you talk to Luis Bruguera or Aldo Alvarez, and they all talk about suffering, being willing to fight. This is a common term in Spain, endurance. But endurance in Spain is like perseverance, not just like physical endurance. It's being willing to suffer when things go badly. And we talked about that at the onset of the lecture. Would you guys rate yourselves having good fighting spirit? Jordan? Good fighting spirit? Ask yourself, are you someone that you could count on in battle? Would you be a good soldier under fire? The famous coach Nick Bollettieri, when he's maybe the greatest recruiter of all time, the greatest talent identifier of all time, he said that one of the measurements, one of the areas that he looks for in players to see if they have potential to be great champions, he says, I want to know if I would take them in my military unit to go on mission. He was a soldier. And he says, I think to myself, would this player be someone I would want on my unit to go into battle? And that's someone who's reliable and who has a fighting spirit when things are going bad, when you're under fire, under pressure. And I think that is a great, sometimes I think about that when the players come to the camp in the academy, I think, would I want to go to battle with this guy? Or I'll tell you what, I'm an EMT and I work on the ambulance. And we sometimes get into some very risky situations as an emergency first responder. I say, is this someone I would want to be my partner on the ambulance? In a life or death situation, is this someone I can rely on? Is this someone who is going to be focused and calm under pressure? Is this someone who, when things get difficult, are they going to run away? We've had people volunteer on our ambulance service who run away when there's a bad call, like an emergency call. We've had people pass out who are being trained. You know, there's some situation arises, and then they literally had to run away. Yeah, we're done. We're finishing up. So that's something you got to ask yourself. You can ask yourself personally: am I someone? Do I have a fighting spirit? Do I need to work on that? Do I need to get stronger internally?